I'm Megan Hamilton, and this is the Embracing Enchantment podcast. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine I met in a business program in February of 2020. You might say that we trauma bonded. She is many things: a flower lover, an herbalist, a professor, a mentor. She's the woman behind the popular podcast In the Clinic with Camille and the author of the book Write Better Newsletters, Grow Your One-to-One Practice with Emails People Actually Want to Read. She has her PhD in nutrition and her master's degrees, plural, in herbal medicine and physiology. Please welcome my friend, Camille Freeman. Hello, Camille.
Hey, Megan. Thanks so much for having me.
I am thrilled to have you, not only because it means we get to spend extra time together, but also because we're going to talk about things that we don't usually talk about very much, even though I have a great interest in herbs and, which is your, your wheelhouse. We just end up not very often talking about it.
No, we mostly stick into business topics, so this is a fun detour to our normal conversations.
Yes, yeah, and I'm so excited to learn from you, and I've got a lot of questions for you today. But before we get started on the podcast, well, never mind, but there won't be a lot to discuss because the card has already fallen out, and so we always go with that card. But we will get to that in a minute. I won't look at it quite yet. It clearly wanted to come out. I'm wondering if you can tell us where your love of herbal medicine began.
Oh, Megan, this is a good question. I first studied herbs actually in high school. I had a teacher, Mrs. Strunk, and she wanted us to do a year-long project. And I was just interested in doing something related to kind of natural medicine. And she pointed me in the direction of herbs. And this was in the 90s. So I had to write off. You had to write letters and mail off for people to send you journal articles about things in the mail. And I did a whole paper on indigenous uses of echinacea in high school.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was my first interest. And then, I kind of took a detour. I went to college, undergrad for a while. And I took a few classes that were sort of holistic oriented, but ultimately I came back around and decided I wanted to go to naturopathic school. And then I looked at the price tag of naturopathic school. I was like, woo. And I looked at the course catalog and I was like, the only ones I'm actually interested in are the ones about herbs. So that's how I clarified my interest.
I had no idea. And I've known you now for almost 6 years. Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
It's so funny. I love that. And I should say, it's so interesting that you were looking at the indigenous uses of echinacea because we are recording today on September 30th, which in Canada is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And part of what I've been thinking a lot about today is as I'm walking around in the park and looking around at the various, what we would call weeds and what we might want to pull out, and thinking about what I've learned over the last few years just from interest about the indigenous plants that grow all around us, and what is not indigenous to our particular places and why those things happen to be growing here now. So it's fitting that you would mention this as your sort of point of departure for this work that you're so interested in on the day that it happens to be. That's so neat. Okay. So as I'm going to pick up the card, then how did you get interested in physiology?
Oh, well, life is just such a roundabout situation. I became interested in physiology. I went to herb school. That's a whole nother story in and of itself, but I went to herb school in Maryland and I did a whole master's degree. I learned how to see clients. I was working with people and I just realized, oh, I want to know a lot more about how the body works to understand how herbs are supporting us. And so that's where I decided to go and get a second master's degree in physiology after my first one, which is kind of funny because had never thought of myself as a science person at all.
Mm.
Just was not my bailiwick, And then
Mhm.
I had a particular interest, and it turns out I'm actually not bad at science.
This is so interesting because this is leading to a question that I've got for you today. It reminds me a lot, actually, of one of my clients who I think came to me through you, who uh, developed an interest in T1 diabetes because her son was diagnosed with diabetes. And so she went to school to learn about nutrition. And I think you were her professor, and then learned that the whole complexity of nutrition has to be examined even further by studying physiology, by studying endocrinology, by studying how the body works and how you can't just manage things through just herbs or through just nutrition, because the entire system of the body is so interrelated and, has a different effect even on any given day based on a whole bunch of other factors. Uh, uh, and that, I guess, is where the holistic word comes in as well, right? We're not just going to take chamomile tea necessarily at bedtime. There might be other herbs that might work with us better at particular points. Anyways, I don't need to tell you this because this is the stuff you can be telling me, but it is so fascinating. And oh my goodness, I just looked at the card. Before we get started here, we got temperance, which is really all about alchemy and mixing things together to create something new or something more powerful. So temperance is in the major arcana. We relate it to balance, but it's not the same as justice in the sense that we are using what is around us. We are using both our intuition, which is shown by the angel having their toes in the water, as well as, empirical, tangible, demonstrable studies, let's say, which is shown by her having her foot on the ground, right? So we're looking at science and we're looking at intuition and we're looking at beyond. I mean, it is a literal angel in this card, so we know there's an element of spirituality. But what I love about this card is that she's pouring something from one cup into the other cup. But if you're looking at the card, and if you want to head over to YouTube, you can see what the card looks like, or you can look up temperance in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. That's not how liquid behaves. Right? So the water that we assume is water is sort of flowing from one cup to the other, but it's on an angle that wouldn't make sense logically, and the water is waving, which again is not necessarily how water would pour. And so it's really asking us to look at what we hold to be true and where we can have curiosity and imagination for what is possible, or what is kind of beyond, because we don't know everything. We have to ground ourselves in basic principles, but what is beyond, and what could we explore and learn from? Also, the sun, the pathway, right, towards the sun and towards the mountains. Mountains usually mean knowledge and wisdom, and the sun on the other side is reflective of the death card. And we think about that in terms of what's on the other side of letting go of, let's say, systems that keep us stuck in a particular narrow field of vision. And how can we open that up to be what's on the other side of this if we get curious, if we get creative, if we explore feelings that don't necessarily make quote unquote sense. And I love that temperance came up as the card for you, because it's all about mixing things together. And I would imagine that's something that you really like to do.
So true. So very true.
Okay. So for folks who are spiritually minded and who love to work with herbs, whether they're in tinctures or teas or even spell work, I mean, we can think of Macbeth, for example, right? The big cauldron and the witches pouring everything into the pot. Obviously, not all of those things are herbs, but a lot of them are. All of the ways that herbs have become integrated in spiritual practices, how would you suggest that somebody gets started learning about herbs? And what are some of the basics?
Mm. Okay, this is a really good question because there are so many different ways to learn about herbs that it kind of depends on your personal interest and draws
Mm.
you what draws you to the work or the knowledge. Because if you are have the intention to become a clinical practitioner, then that's going to be a different pathway than if you are interested in learning what herbs grow in your ecosystem and how you might harvest them safely, or if you're interested in learning about traditional uses of herbs and the history behind them and magical uses, that's a whole different route. So you might pick different teachers and different paths depending on your interest. So I think the first thing I would recommend is just think to yourself, oh, what is it that I actually really want to learn about? Um, my second piece of advice would be to just look care. I mean, it is the internet out there. The internet is out there, and there are all kinds of people who have who take the approach of being, one step ahead, and then they're going to charge you however much money to learn what they've learned. So of course, there is value in wisdom and learned experience and lived experience, but I also think if you really want to learn deeply, you want to look at who you're learning from and what is their
Mhm.
background and what is their experience. So, don't go trying to learn spiritual practices from some 20-year-old who's just read a book or two. Like we want, if you are interested in that, then let's find somebody who's authentically involved in this work and who has been doing the work for long enough to have something to pass on to you and that it feels like a equitable relationship. Those are the things that I would say. There's so much that you can learn just by on your own, looking around, just being like, oh, I wonder what that plant is. Let me look it up. There are medicinal and traditional plant books available for pretty much any ecosystem. You can find yours and start looking it up and start figuring things out on your own. There's absolutely low cost, no cost ways to start working with herbs, but I think that working with other people who have experience and a background in the kinds of things that you're interested in doing is probably the best thing to do. I can make more specific
Mm.
recommendations if people are interested in that.
Well, I mean, in your work, as somebody who, your practice was mostly based in fertility, herbal work. Is that right?
Yeah, I do fertility, pregnancy, perimenopause, essentially.
Right. Okay. So herbs and hormones,
Yeah, sure.
the double H. Um,
Hmm.
and so, but you also mentor people. Like you have a program called Monday Mentoring, and you teach people how to build their practices. And you even wrote this incredible book. I'm just going to plug this right here, which
Oh,
is Write Better Newsletters. And it is, I can say that it is an incredible book as somebody who has written, I don't even know how many newsletters in my life, and has taken multiple programs on it. This is such a comprehensive way to get started with writing emails. So obviously it's written for practitioners, but it's great for anybody, frankly. Um, so your work has evolved, but when you are mentoring people, how often do you come across, are you only mentoring herbal practitioners? So people who have gone through a certain protocol?
I work with people who are in clinical practice, either
Okay.
herbalists or nutritionists or both. So I do not train people to become herbalists or nutritionists. There's lots of people who are doing that really well. What I do is I take people who have already been trained, they're doing the work, and they're like, oh, This happens to a lot of us, I
Yeah,
think,
I
in
know,
all
it really
professions. You
does. Yeah.
get out of school and you're like, wow, I used to have professors and classmates and resources and support. And then all of a sudden you're just on your own and you're like, wow, this is a hard case. Or I do not know what to do when somebody asks for a refund or when I don't have any new clients and we're on week 7 and I'm worried about paying my bills. So I essentially kind of step in there and support people in that aspect of, um, yeah, just swimming in the ocean, trying not to be alone. That's where I come in.
Oh, I love that. I love that statement or that metaphor. So, thinking of the crossover with herbal work and its history, sort of as the foundations of medicine or even modern medicine, and thinking about the work that you're doing, how much crossover, how much of the conversation, if any, uh, involves sort of spiritual practice? Does that ever come up in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it does a lot. And I think, because you can't separate that from the rest of,
Hmm.
you know, it's not like, because I do clinical work and then I do my mentoring work. And in both of those, whether somebody is coming to me for support around a health issue going on or support around running a business as a practitioner, it's not like spirituality is separate from either of those things. It's, you can't separate these pieces out from people. So the way that I think about herbs and the way I'm trained to work with herbs is primarily in the biomedical, the biomedical realm of thinking about, oh, side effects. Let's make sure this doesn't interact with your medications. Let's make sure this is a good fit for you in those senses. But a lot of the work I'm also trained to do is to think about the person as a whole and what are their overall needs. And one of the reasons I think plants and fungi, but I think what we might consider sort of broadly herbalism is different than taking, let's say, a supplement, vitamin E or something like that, is that plants, like people, are complex beings. And so part of what we think about to figure out which plants might be good friends with which people is just that chemistry, that
Mm,
that alignment. And I think part of that is a spiritual practice of acknowledging that these plants are complex beings that are in many ways mysterious. We think we can generally predict how they might interact with a person, but we don't always know. And I think that's a big part of what makes herbalism different from the supplement-based model of like, oh, let me take this herb for this condition. It's really not what I do. Like you can read about that. You can go to the health food store, you can get that, and that is absolutely fine. And some people find that very helpful. But working with an herbalist is a bigger conversation than that.
okay, well, that is really interesting. And I'm wondering if there's a way to dive into that a little bit further. So, what is the difference then, say, going to the drugstore and getting some valerian root and working with an herbalist?
Right. Well, it depends on the herbalist because there are herbalists trained in all different ways. So I don't want to speak for everybody.
Mhm.
But I will say that most of the people that come, if people are going to pay to come see me, they have tried some things. They're not,
Right.
people have the internet. They have looked
Mhm.
up some basic DIY things and tried them at home and suddenly been like, either this is not working, it's not working the way I thought it would, it's what have you. So where I come in, and I think where a lot of herbalists come in, is that we're not just looking for what symptoms are you having and let's match up this herb with that symptom. We're looking for patterns. We're looking at the person as a whole and saying, oh, okay, you have all these symptoms. We are taking into account your medicines and your diagnoses and any safety issues to be aware of and all that sort of thing. But we're also saying, I notice that this person is profoundly ungrounded based on life events or current events. I mean, all of us are a little ungrounded right now, I would say. Um, but we're we're looking at an overall picture. We're looking at, wow, what are we feeling in our hearts based on what this person is telling us? What is our intuition? Is there something going on where this person needs to be soothed? They need to be warmed up. They need improved circulation. What are these things? So we're taking all that into account, and then we're thinking which herbs come in and support people in these complex ways, not just, oh, valerian sleep. This person's having sleep problems, let's give them valerian. We're thinking more like, okay, they can't sleep because their mind is running in circles all night. Do 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 do. They're just this constant list of did I turn the oven off? Did I write back to that email I was supposed to write back to? I forgot to tell my kid good night, whatever.
Uh-huh.
If that's an
Uh-huh.
issue, I'm going to give you a totally different herb than if you are waking up 7 times a night because you're in perimenopause and you're too hot and you're sorry. That's a different scenario. And there's a different plant friend that's going to come in and support you in each of those cases, depending on you and what else is going on.
Yeah, that feels so good to hear. Just in the, there are certain times when all of us have probably gone to somebody for some support and given a symptom, and then finding that doesn't work, and then the person, maybe we go back to the person and the person just says, and I'm very specifically not naming a profession because I'm trying not to demonize any profession, because I've had terrible doctors and I've had incredible doctors. I'm very blessed right now to have a gorgeous team of really caring people, as well as mental health doctors, as well as naturopaths. There's so many different modalities of I guess, healing. But the idea of looking at the cause and the root instead of just treating the symptom feels really like nurturing.
Yeah, and I think one of the hardest things about living in such a complex moment in time is that it's
Mhm.
really, really hard to objectively understand your own situation.
Mhm.
Sometimes some of the biggest work that I do for people is just listening and saying, "Oh, wow, there's all of these things going on. I can see why your body is speaking to you in this way." Like it makes sense that your body might be advocating for itself and trying to get your attention. And they always say that the old saying, "You can't read the label from inside the bottle." I think that's what
Mhm.
many of us are doing,
Mhm.
is just trying to be that outside eye of putting things together for people. Um, the other thing I'll say about herbs that I really love is that it's almost like our relationships with people, where when we have a friendship with somebody or a relationship, we don't really have to have the answer from them. Like they don't have to fix us per
Mhm.
se,
Mhm.
but sometimes just being around someone who resonates with you is healing. And I find that
Mhm.
herbs are like that. And it's with herbs, it's almost the same as when you are meeting new people for the first time. And there's some people where you're like, this is a lovely person, but they are not my lovely person. Like
Mhm.
they irritate me. Like we don't
Yep.
get along. Even they're for some people, but they're not for me. Herbs can be like that too.
Right.
Like there's some herbs that you just are like, I love this plant and I feel better when I am working with this plant. And there's some where it's not like a dangerous or risky herb, but it's just like not your herb. So because they're complex beings, just like we are, and sometimes for mysterious reasons, we either fit or we don't fit. But I wanted to make a side point there, which I think a lot of people don't think about when it comes to herbs, because we're just thinking in more of like a biomedical model of, okay, we have all these amazing medications that do incredible things. I'm a huge fan of pharmaceutical medications for the most part. Um, but they are designed to do a specific thing. They're working on a pathway, a molecule, they're intended to do a certain thing. Don't always know exactly how they're doing it, but with herbs, I think one of the beautiful things is that we're not trying to treat a symptom. It's illegal, in fact, in the US anyway, for us to treat anything. We're not medical practitioners. What we're doing
Mm.
is really sometimes just giving the body space to reset a little bit. So the theory is if you give the body the resources and the space, in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, it can heal, it can recover, it can at least get to a more balanced spot. And so it doesn't, you don't actually have to know exactly what is going on. You just have to find plants that meet people where they are, that give them a little bit more resource and capacity to heal.
Um, I'm really enjoying this conversation, Camille. I am loving listening to this approach. And with that in mind, what are some of your, best friend herbs?
Hmm. Okay. So, for me, one of my very, very best friend herbs is chamomile, which everybody,
I knew you were going to say that.
yeah, I know. It's such for me, it's not for everybody. There are people who
Mhm.
don't get along with chamomile. It's shocking to me, but it is true. Um,
I mean, aren't some people allergic to it?
it's not, yeah, yeah, it's not for everybody. It's so sad for them. Um, not really. There's other amazing choices for
They
other
might have
people.
their own best friends.
Yeah, they do. They do. They may some people may find chamomile irritating. Um, I feel one of the things I love about chamomile that resonates with me so much is that it's underestimated. People think, oh, sweet Peter Rabbit chamomile, what a gentle herb for babies and, calming people down. I'm like, no, it is incredibly powerful. Only you have to take enough and you have to take it for long enough. And you have to give it a chance to do its thing. And if you do, it is slow and it is steady and it is incredibly good at giving you that support to change it all around gently.
To change what all around?
Well, it depends. One of the main things people think about chamomile for is calming the nervous system, and it absolutely does. Not necessarily if you take a tea bag from the grocery store and dunk it in hot water for a minute or two. I mean, it's lovely. It's just a nice beverage, and it can be soothing just to drink warm water. But if you really want to give it a shot, what you need to do is triple, quadruple that dose of a tea bag and let it steep for 20 to 30 minutes at least, covered, so you don't lose all that lovely aromatic quality to it. And then you need to have it every day for 6 weeks or so and see what happens. And I make a joke sometimes to my mentoring folks. I say, I'm tempted. I have never done this, but I'm tempted sometimes to tell people that before I will work with them, I want them to just take chamomile for 6 weeks and we will work with whatever's left over at the end of that, if anything.
Uh, that is so interesting. So interesting because, well, and I told this to you recently. I was in my backyard and I've already, I love to, uh, and I say this with so many caveats because we want to make sure everybody's safe and there's there's all kinds of stuff out there that can make you very, very sick. For example, I've got lots of nightshade berries in the back right now that, don't touch them, don't eat them. They're not they're not ingestible. However, I also have dandelion and wild chamomile, which I was telling you about the other day. And I just found lamb's quarter, right? Which everybody's garden has what we would call the weed of lamb's quarter, but saw that it was seeding and it looked so interesting. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to look up what this is. And then I found out that it's really high in iron, I think, and maybe niacin, and that the seeds are similar to quinoa, or at least from the same quinoa family, and have a lot of incredible properties to them as well. And I was like, great, I'm gonna grab this and throw it in my morning smoothie and see what happens there. Now again, this is I am by no means a scholar in any capacity with herbs, but when I get curious about things, if I feel like 100% certain that what I'm foraging, I guess, is what I think it is, then I'll give it a shot. But one thing that I was finding really interesting when I was telling you about the chamomile, because I was putting some herbs together to make for teas for people for Christmas, because I just like to do, like a forage, or I saved my morning glory seeds last year, and that was one of my Christmas presents to people. When I realized that this little plant that grows in clusters, that has these cute little yellow balls with tiny little petals that I love the smell of, I just had never realized that it was wild chamomile. And then, uh, you know, then I was so excited. I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to forage this and make it into a tea. But now I know, I don't even know if I have enough for one cup, if I need 4 times the amount. And with that in mind, I mean, thinking about being curious and thinking about how we even get started in being interested in this. And I know you said like it's, think about what you want to do with it, but what if you're just trying to figure out even where your interests lie? Is there, a beginner's, like a book that you recommend, or a podcast to listen to, or just about somebody who's got sort of a very layman's curiosity about herbs that might turn into something else? Where is a great place to start to just, as you say, figure out what's in your backyard?
Yes. Okay. So I have a lot. I have a lot of recommendations.
That does
Okay.
not surprise me. When you go to
Yes.
Camille's website, you are going to see literally hundreds of recommendations, and it is such a valuable resource.
Oh, thanks. Okay. So here's what I would do. First of all, do not spend a lot of money. This is, we like to call herbalism the people's medicine. You do not need to go buying some $500 course to learn all this. Just please let's get some books. Let's get some low cost things. Let's go to some herb walks locally. Like find the people who do know.
Mm.
Usually Parks and Rec, or even if you have a local herbalist, a lot of them do herb walks every now and then. You can sign up for. It's really fun. Then you can be very sure that you know, because there's a person there telling you. So that would be my
Mhm.
number one recommendation, is just see if you can sign up for some herb walks or some herb classes from your local herbalist or Parks and Rec people, because there's often lots that you can do there. If you want to do a very low cost sort of educational thing, if you like online courses at a beginner friendly level from people who are very good herbalists, there is a platform called Learning Herbs. And I believe it's something like 7 or 10 or $12 a month that you can sign up, and they have all kinds of, courses, and you can learn how to make salves, and you can learn about any herb you want, and you can learn how to more about energetics and whatever. It's a great beginner resource for folks who are getting started at a low cost. So I'd recommend that. For books, there are, I don't have them right here, but I have them nearby. Um, there is a book by Maria Noel Groves. She wrote Body into Balance. It's a beginner friendly book to just get your wits about you when it comes to herbs. Rosalie de la Forêt wrote one called The Alchemy of Herbs. That's great for people who have a interest in energetics and matching plants to people. Kat Meyer also wrote one called Energetic Herbalism that your folks might be interested in.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there's also The Wild Medicine Solution by Guido Massé that talks more about this what happens when we work with our local herbs and our wild herbs, and why there's something special and different about that versus just taking a bottle with a capsule in it, and how when we work with herbs, we really are taking pieces of our ecosystem into our bodies, and we're communicating with the world outside. We're hearing
Mhm.
more. We're hearing from the plants on a visceral level. And I love that. I love that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm getting full body chills. I think it's part of the reason I love to go in the backyard and take a look at all of these plants that I have, just never really thought much about, and learning what, how much food we have available to us too, and
Yeah.
not even anything that we cultivate, just kind of on its own naturally. There's wild raspberries in the backyard and wild strawberries. I didn't do anything about those. And frankly, I didn't get to anyway because the bunnies got them. But, but you know what? That's great because I love having bunnies in the backyard. And if they want to have, oh, do bunnies like chamomile?
I don't, I would assume they do, but I don't know. I can
Oh,
never
yeah.
get chamomile to grow here, so I
Really?
don't know. No,
Oh, you're gonna
no.
have to come visit then and come and see my wild chamomile in the backyard.
Mm, I'd love
Um,
to.
okay, so this is thinking about what we were talking about before about sort of, the integration of spirituality and herbs and, the holistic approach and thinking about everything kind of as a whole in the sense of taking an herb that is native to where you live and, uh, thrives on some of the same things that you thrive on, has the same sunlight patterns that you're exposed to. And you can sort of, if you start to think intentionally about it and not just as these like um, separate pieces, you can start to see where that might be the quote unquote magic of it all, right? The idea that there's stuff that we do know about it, but then there's all this stuff that we don't know. And as you said earlier, it doesn't matter if we don't know why, we just know that, you love chamomile and like love it, right? And it really works with you and it may not work for somebody else, but I watched an interview with Jinx Monsoon, who is a famous trans drag queen, Broadway star, magic woman, and I think she's a witch as well. And she said, basically, I'm not perfectly quoting her, but she said, science and magic are the same. Science is just magic explained, and magic is science we haven't found the explanation for. Where can we integrate science with our spirituality and not feel like we need to shun one in favor of the other?
Mm, I love that.
Yeah. But that's my question to you.
Yeah.
Like, how can we, one of the principles of magic is that you can hold two seemingly separate things to both be true at the same time. And so I feel like it's coming back. It used to be that science and spirituality, for example, like the work of Carl Jung, very much had a scientific model to it, but also explored curiosity and spirituality as sort of one and the same. And then we really started putting everything in categories and separating it and not looking at the integrations. But now it seems like maybe we are coming back to that, or at least there's a movement towards that. How would one, for somebody who's grown up without a, a spiritual background, for example, how might they be able to see, let's say, herbs and the holistic value of herbs that you were just talking about, right? The soil and the sun patterns and where they grow and the location and the differences, maybe just even in the minerals in the soil in a particular place. But then the stuff that we don't know, how would you start to, what's the word I want to look for? Because I don't want to make it some kind of morality issue where if you believe in one thing or not the other, then that's a moral issue. But if you were curious about how to deconstruct the idea of science and logic being the only ways of looking at the world, do you have any suggestions for how people might start to cultivate a curiosity while also having grown up in those frameworks? That's a complex question, I know.
It is a complex question. And I think part of it is that you just have to experiment. I don't think you're going to talk somebody into one way or the other.
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
I think that the sciencey people, in order to understand a more spiritual or energetic approach to herbs, may I have seen, for example, people where going through their own health challenges has been what opened their eyes to where they're like, okay, well, I got to the end of what science could offer me, and I
Mm-hmm.
still wasn't better. And then
Mm-hmm.
I started to look around and say, okay, what else? What else? So that may, for some
Mm-hmm.
people, that may be where they are. And it's for some people, if they want to look at it through the lens of science and that's what makes sense to their mind and their body, amazing. Versus folks who want to look at it who are like, science doesn't matter to me. I want to be in like a heart space and a magical space and a whatever space. I don't think that those folks necessarily have to understand the science. I think that
Mm-hmm.
obviously with herbs there are safety issues, and we want to be, we don't want to be just running around willy-nilly using things and harvesting, and there's safety issues for the plants as well as for the people. Um, so I don't think we have to necessarily marry them. I think that there are so many levels, and it works whether you think it works or not. Like that what's going to work is going to work. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to be where I am, and I know that if people need a more academic approach than what I offer, there's lots of practitioners who do that. If they need a more spiritual approach than what I offer, there's lots of people who do that too. So I feel like more than changing people or like changing their minds, it's just about being like, yeah, these are all layers of the truth. And so we can be in any of the layers, and it's still, it's still real.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I love that. People get to be where they are, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yes.
get to be where they are.
Yeah.
And I have to say that it's, uh, you know, it is possible to be a bull in a china shop on any of these layers too.
Mm-hmm.
To be somebody who knows just enough to be dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
um, from the spiritual all the way up to the most just academic layer of all, that each of these still requires its own knowledge and experience, and they all, they have their own rich traditions, whether that's in PubMed and reading scientific papers, or whether that's in books and wisdom that's passed down generation to generation. It's all, we can't just go wild in any of the layers and think we know what we're doing. It has, you come in humbling yourself as a beginner and learn and listen and be with the plants and be with people who know what they're talking about and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, would you say that could be a red flag if you're looking for a practitioner and that person is very, uh, what's the word I would be looking for? Not prescriptive necessarily, but my way or the highway?
Oh, I tell you what, if anybody seems very sure that any intervention will do something, I don't know what to tell you. It's not true. It's true. And that's the same goes for medicine, a prescription, over the counter, herbs, anything. If somebody's like, oh, of course, if you have asthma, you need to do X, Y, and Z, I'm like, this person is overconfident. And there's all kinds of reasons that they may be overconfident. But I'm like, if you have any experience or knowledge of working with actual people, then you will know that
Mm.
there is nothing that is true 100% of the time. There are first steps. There are things that seem to help most people. There are good ideas of places to start. And then people's bodies do not listen to instructions sometimes.
So pesky.
So pesky. You're like, but you were supposed to relax when I give you magnesium, and you're not.
You're doing the opposite. Um, okay, so as we close out, because I feel like I have now 50 more questions than when we started, and that's that could be you and me another time. Um, you have this program that's starting. So if you're catching the podcast sort of within the first few days of when it's coming out, uh, Camille and Camille had been talking about this. She and I meet every 2 weeks, just about to talk about what we're up to and sort of mentor each other. And you've got this program coming up that I just love the title, and it's called Take Your Tonic. And it's for everybody, right?
It's for everybody. Yeah.
Can you
It's,
tell us about it? Yeah.
I will tell you about it. It is I started this program in the spring of 25 because I just felt like everything was going down the drain here
What do
in
you
the
mean?
United States. I don't know. Just, and I was like, every single person I work with, whether it's my one-on-one clients, the people I'm mentoring, my colleagues, everyone, it was just like fried crispy. And I was like,
Mm,
we all need a tonic just to get through what's happening right now. It's a tonic. And for people who aren't familiar, a tonic is something that you're doing for overall health, not to fix a problem, but just to strengthen you, to fortify you overall. So it's considered like a gentle, super safe, either herb or action or activity that nourishes you. And the idea is to, if you just do these gentle tonics daily, like I was talking about with chamomile, over time, they fortify you, they strengthen you, they give you the resource that you need to do the work that is important for you to do, whether that's taking care of yourself or others or whatever else it is that's important out there. So I was like, okay, I just want to I know I know how to recommend tonics. So I decided to have this program where it's a very simple program. We meet, I go through just a little presentation about what is a tonic and some options. People pick their own. I'm not picking them for them, but a tonic. Last time we did a tonic, I did chamomile tea as my tonic, of course.
I was going to ask you
But
that.
one person did yoga nidra was that person's tonic, and they just tried to do it every
Mm,
day or as many days as possible. Some people did, like a syrup, like a rose syrup or skullcap, or anyway, there's bitters. Some people decided I want to take bitters every day. And anyway, some people decided journaling was going to be their tonic. So we just pick a tonic. We have that one meeting to help you pick. It's recorded in case you can't be there. And then the idea is you're just going to take your tonic for 6 weeks. And then we check in at the end and see how it went. So there's no other meetings. I send you a couple emails a week just to be like, hey, did you forget about your tonic? The hardest thing about doing this is actually remembering to take your tonic.
yeah.
And then we just check in at the end and see, hey, how did it go? Did your tonic, do you feel better? You know, what's up? That's it. That's the whole program. It's very straightforward. And my intention is just, please, could we all take a tonic to just navigate this as best we can so that you're not draining yourself and burning out, just trying to wake up every day and change the world a little bit. So
Mm.
that's it. I would love for people to join. I can give you the link. It's $25. It's very low cost. I find that if it's totally free, people just sign up for funsies and don't actually do it.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
if money is a problem for anybody, you could just email me and I'm happy to get you in there. It's more just sign up if you actually want to take a tonic, not just because you think you might theoretically take a tonic at some day in the future.
I love it. I love it. And how did you feel at the end of your 6 weeks of taking your chamomile tea tonic?
It made a difference. I felt calmer. I felt better the day every now and then there's a day that I didn't take it, and I was like, okay, I notice if I don't take my chamomile.
Really? Do you take it before
Yeah.
bed?
Yep. I switched. I'm on a different tonic right now, but I do. I have a every night before bed, I make myself and actually my kids now, I make them some tea. We all have a glass of tea, mug of tea before bed, and that's what we do. It's just like our own little ritual.
Um, uh, right. And we know, because we've talked about ritual so many times on this podcast, how important ritual can be, right? And honestly, so much of the time I find it just all boils down to intention, thinking about it, not just being swept up in the sea of life and the troubles and the overwhelm that's happening, but just stopping and taking a moment and saying, wait a minute, what do I want? How would I like things to be? What is something I can do towards that? Not just feeling constantly like you're powerless within all of the different things that are happening. If one were to start a chamomile tea practice, how much chamomile are we talking? What's 4 times the amount? What does that look like? Like
Okay,
what's a
so
what's a cup version? Like how many cups?
Yeah, and I will caution people that if you are going to start a new tea, a new herb of any sort, please look it up and make sure that it is appropriate for you because even like chamomile, it is in there, it is in the ragweed family. Some people who have really strong allergies, it may not be the best choice. Some people with IBS do not do well with chamomile. So, and even like the
Mm,
gentlest, safest herbs are not for everybody.
right.
So it's okay. Please look it up, especially if you're on any meds, especially if you have any diagnoses. Like, even if you think it's super safe, look it up.
Like
Um,
they're not kidding when they say talk to your doctor before you take stuff, right? And you're like, what do you mean? It's just a flower. What? And it's like,
no,
no, no, no.
no.
There's, it's medicine.
Well, this is the thing. Like, if we want to believe that herbs are powerful
Hmm.
in affecting us, then we have to believe that they're powerful in affecting us, and therefore they may also affect our health and our bodies and our medicines and everything else we're doing. So yes, um, let people know that you're doing them. It is possible to use herbs symbolically and ritually. So I have worked with people, for example, a lot of folks I work with are pregnant, and for various reasons, there's herbs that are not appropriate for them in that phase of life. But you can work with herbs symbolically, such as just sitting with a plant, smelling it, being around it. These are also ways to work with a plant that don't involve ingesting it. So if you're worried and you're like, I'm in very fragile health, or I don't want to you know, upset the apple cart, you can absolutely do topical herbs. You can grow an herb. You can go outside and sit with an herb or look at an herb that you already have nearby. These are all also ways to work with herbs and think about them and have them in your life that don't involve ingesting them. Um, so anyway, I forgot where I was going. Oh, dose, right. So most of our sort of gentle, safe, everyday herbs, medicinal, I don't want to say medicinal because we don't really think of them as medicine in the same sense of a prescription, but a therapeutic dose, if you're really looking to get a good chunk of it in there, would be a sort of at a minimum 7 to 10 grams. And a tea bag usually will have like 1 or 2 grams. Okay.
Okay.
So chamomile happens to be really fluffy. It's very light when you dry it. And so it's very big, volume wise, it's very big. If you've ever gotten a pound of chamomile, I mean, it's like a pillow, you're like, wow, that is
Oh,
a lot of
what
chamomile.
a gorgeous pillow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but
But you'll go through it
yeah,
quickly because you're using like a cup of
yeah,
it.
you need a lot to get a therapeutic dose. So you really can't overdo it with chamomile unless you don't like the taste of it, but you're not going to overdose on most of us are not going to overdose on chamomile. So you can
Right.
you can have too little to make a difference, but you can drink as much as you want, really. And then a lot of people just aren't steeping it long enough. And so
Mm,
the other thing is chamomile is fairly delicate once it's dried. And so if you're getting it from a store that doesn't have good turnover or it wasn't processed, some kind of cheapo grocery store brand, it may not be giving you as much benefit as a fresher, higher quality chamomile. And so it should smell flowery and a little bit like green apples when you crush it up. And if it doesn't,
mm.
then you know you need to kind of start over and maybe get a better quality.
And do we include the roots? Yeah.
Not with chamomile. No. With
Not with
chamomile, we
chamomile.
do not. Mm-mm.
Okay. Just the
Not
flowers
with
and the
chamomile.
stems?
Yeah, usually it's just the flowers. Hmm.
Oh, just the
And
flowers.
that's why it's, yes,
I'm going to be, I think I have one dose in the backyard. That's it.
yes, it takes a lot to grow chamomile because it's a lot of leaf for flower.
Right.
The
Okay.
leaf per flower is quite,
So
quite, quite high. Yeah.
just the flowers. Okay. Gotcha. That's good to know before I make my Christmas teas.
Yes.
Maybe I will,
Yes.
maybe I will
Well,
consult with you before I put them all
you know
together.
what you could do is you could dry some and put it in a sleep pillow. Cut
Oh,
that,
that's a nice idea.
with some
Yeah.
lavender and some rice or something like that. You could do that.
Hmm. Okay. Camille, it's been so nice to talk to you about all of this and your passion and all of the like. I love how much you love flowers and herbs. Like it's really enjoyable to be around. So I appreciate you coming here and sharing all of this with us. and your thoughtfulness around it as well.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Megan. This was really fun.
It was really fun. Okay, so you can find all of the information and takeaways from today's episode in the show notes or at embracingenchantment.com. Please subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd love for you to leave a review. You can also leave a voice note at embracingenchantment.com, and we might feature it in a future episode. You can find out more about Camille, including all of the things we talked about, where to grab her excellent book, and where to follow her in the show notes. You're going to want to make sure you're subscribed because we have incredible episodes about witch stones and spells for success as we're coming on our first anniversary, which is so wild to me. You can catch up on previous episodes where we talked about astrology with Colin Bedell, hereditary witch Amy Miranda, podcast host and author Pam Grossman, and so much more. Until then, here's to building an enchanted life.